Hello, we're live. This is Thursday, January 14th, and I got a link to the video, but I'm going to delete it because now I made the full classwork post with all the info and stuff. It's right here, and let's take a look. So we've done a sketch of your idea. We thought about what the main functions are going to be, and we planned out the steps. Actually, I do want to have that. The steps, and most of you guys turn this in, but if you still are working, that's fine. First one is to put the objects on the screen. Then we're going to start to make them move. Then the hard part, how do they bump into each other and what happens? And then how do we create or destroy new ones once things happen? And then we test it. And then you kind of loop back, and once you test, you'll realize what to change. You go back to here, change how they move or how they bump and all that stuff. Anyway, now we're actually just going to do step one. So we're going to put some objects on the screen, and how you're going to do that is we're not going to start from scratch. You don't have to make a blank file and type everything, and we're not going to start from somebody else's tutorial. We're going to start with our project and just make it evolve in a new direction. Change a little, change a little, change a little, and by the end it'll be a big change, but you never have to do it all at once. So you can take your Pong project from last time, or you can use this one. This is like a generic example version that I've got right here, and I made a copy of so that when I change it, it's not going to affect the one you guys use. This is a simple version. It's got the one player instead of the two. That looked weird because whenever you run into it at the first second or two, it gets a little wonky. But now it's perfect. It bounces. I'm controlling it with the mouse. It bounces off. Everything's working. And this is a mouse control, but I also put the keyboard control code in there. If you're going to use that for yours, you can take this and take the comment off and mess with them. This has, we fixed that out of bounds issue where it would like bounce behind the thing and come around. If you remember, I posted a video about like early December where we were adding stuff like this to prevent that from happening. But anyway, you can use this if you don't want to use yours. Maybe you changed yours or added weird stuff at the end. Regardless, that's totally fine. So what you do is you go hit, click on the title and hit fork, and that'll make a copy with just a number added to the title. We probably want to change that in order to make a descriptive title. So let's say what I'm going to do is take this and try to change a few parts. I'm going to go with the breakout game. If you know what I'm talking about, I think 2 people said you're going to do that for your project. Breakout was a game for Atari where you have your little paddle on the bottom, you move it left and right, and it bounces off and it hits these bricks. Sometimes they disappear right away, other times they crack and you have to hit them twice. Other times there are ones you need to avoid or whatever. But I thought it'd be easy as a first step because it is similar to Pong, the way it bounces and so on. If you're doing something else, that's great. Totally fine. But let's just pick one. So what do we need to do for our first change? The ball is probably fine. We probably don't have to change the ball at all, maybe the starting point, but it's going to bounce around and bounce off the paddle. The paddle will have to change to make it on the bottom instead of the side, which won't really be a huge deal. We just make the width and height switch, and then we make the starting position a little different. But before we do that, we got to remove that wall on the bottom. Okay, so let's look over here. When we draw the walls, we got to take off the one. I hope this is going to work. It's giving me that stopping forever thing. Maybe I'll refresh the tab. We're going to take off the wall that is the bottom. So which one is that? This one we got 0, 0, go over, width, and down border, so that's the top. We probably should have labeled these with comments, right? Because then we wouldn't have to like figure it out. But this one starts 0, 0, goes over border and down height, so that one is the left side. So this one must be the bottom. Let's take a look to make sure. It starts at 0, and then here-ish, height minus border, and then it goes over. Yeah, so this guy is our bottom border or bottom wall. So I'm going to go, boop, take that out. Hey, if this thing finally loaded. There we go. I'm going to take that out because that is the space where our paddle is going to go. So now if I hit run, it should not draw this. It's still going to bounce, by the way, because the bounce code didn't change. So it'll act like it's there, but it won't look like it's there. Okay, see, that has empty space. Should we draw one on the right side? Because on breakout, I think it'll probably have one on the right side. Yeah, probably. How would we do that? Well, let's add one of these guys and give it a shot. Where are we going to start? We're going to start at width minus border, because we like go all the way over and then pull back a bit. And then we, what's our coordinate here is probably 0, unless I always mix up the x and y and positive and negative on these. And then we go over border, yeah, down height, yeah. Is that right on my first guess? Let's see. Yeah, and I think my paddle will destroy it and turn it black if I move on it, but quickly that will change. Okay, so that's our first step, is to make the walls in the right place. That's going to be true for probably a lot of your games. For example, if you're doing a platformer game, you can take off the bottom and then add platforms that you stand on, but you want that sort of empty void that your guy can fall into. You might not do that as step 1. You might start by making a flat ground and then test your jumping first, but either way, no problem. Now let's change the paddle. By the way, I'm not changing the collision. The ball is bouncing off stuff that's not there, you know, like if it hits the bottom. But that's okay. This first assignment is only to do the object, so we want to keep it simple. Once we see how things look, then we can see how they move, then we can get to the hard stuff. So for our paddle, what do we got to change? The dimensions are probably going to switch. Let's make it 100 by 20 instead of 20 by 100. Because that means that it'll look, you know, flat, but that won't actually change where it is. In this case, we're going to be moving it left and right, so it's going to have an X instead of a Y. And the X is not just used in this initialization, but it's going to be used every time we move it, determining, you know, where it's going, left and right. The show is still the same thing happening. Like it's still doing the same job of every frame it disappears in this one and it gets redrawn in this one. So it's doing the same job, but we'll have to change what's actually happening since it's a new thing in a new place. By the way, I have show and hide. Some of you guys don't. You have it in one with like show black and then redraw it, show white. That's fine. It's the same thing happening. So let's see what's going to happen. We're going to draw on the screen with the color. That doesn't change. When it gets to this capital R rect, that's when it's actually giving the coordinate and dimensions. So the way it works, just to remind you, with the rect, and this is a little confusing and I sometimes mix myself up, but the first two things are the X and Y of the top left. Like if you drew the rectangle, like if this little scroll bar is a rectangle, then this would be the coordinate. And then the next thing is how much over you move. And then the last thing is how much down you move. So it's not the coordinates here and here. That would coincide if it's in the top left, but it's the coordinate of this spot and then how much you go over and how much you go down. So in this case, these might be the same. These are definitely not. So rect, hang on. Okay, I'm a little bit messing myself up because I was thinking, wait, width overall, we use the same word for width inside the paddle. That's okay. Just don't confuse yourself. This is the issue of looking at code you made a couple months ago, and now you go, wait, what was this? What was this? But we'll figure it out. And we'll label it better as we go and improve the early stuff as we add new stuff too. So what's our top left coordinate of the paddle? Well, it's going to be down here-ish instead of over here-ish. So it's going to be, well, you're going to start at the bottom and go up. So you're going to go height minus border, or height minus self.height for your y, because your y is not changing. See, now I'm messing myself up. The height thing made so much sense last semester, and now I'm kicking myself for naming it that way. Height minus self.height, and then over here probably just self.x. Let's try that. I don't think that's perfect in terms of whether it's going to work with collision and everything, but let's try that and see what happens. Copy this over here. Oh, yeah, it's starting in the right place. It's starting here, but then it goes over way too much. So, boop. Boop. How about that? Hey, okay, so that's drawn fine. It's not perfect. I think I need to go back and fix how the height and width. If you remember last time, we were doing this weird thing where it was like the x or the y coordinate of the paddle was the middle of it, which means that we had to like go up half and then down half. Maybe we can brush that aside and do it better this time, or maybe we can keep going with it. But if we do, we have to take that into account. Anyway, this looks okay, and you always want to make something evolve. We drew this. It's fine. It's not even close to working, but we drew this, and now let's improve it rather than trying to like throw it all out and start over. What do we need to change next? How about the movement? I know the movement is a separate assignment. Is this going to work if I literally change one letter? Is it going to move with the mouse? I don't know. It's worth a shot. Oh no. Hey, it does work. Well, kind of. It was moving with the mouse, not perfectly. Like I said, I think it has to do with that issue of the starting in the middle and moving each way thing. But we're getting there, right? We got our thing in the right place. We're going to start moving it, which is a separate thing anyway. Let's add a brick up here. If we were doing a breakout game, we would have a bunch of these guys in the top half of the screen. So we could use the paddle class and then end up making like separate rules for the one on the bottom versus the one on the top. We could make a totally separate class that has a lot of stuff in common. Or we could do the thing where we have a subclass, like you make a rectangle that applies to both, and then paddle and brick are like subsidiaries of that. We probably don't have to do that this time since that already is technically happening. The rectangle class is part of Pygame. So it's not like we have to make one. It's already kind of there. Let's do something very inefficient. I'm going to literally copy all that stuff and then say class brick with a capital B. Same dimensions. The initializing is fine. It's just going to get a different input. The show is going to be slightly different. The hide is going to only happen once. When it gets broken, it'll disappear rather than every frame it's moving. The update is going to be totally different. And so we'll get to that later. Let's make a brick, okay? Brick test equals brick. What's our, let's just make it show up in the very top, not the top left because it might hit a wall or something, but close-ish. We're going to give it an x coordinate. Oh, we got to give it something slightly different because our bricks are going to have different x and different y, right? Because our paddle is in one spot, it never moves up or down, it only has left and right, whereas our bricks, they don't move, but there are going to be some here and some below and some to the side, and so therefore it's going to have the x's different and the y's different in not the same brick, but the multiple instances of the same class. So it's going to need both, probably, unless we think of a cool way to arrange them. So let's just say when you initialize it, you give it an x and a y. And let me just say like 50, 50, which is going to go over a little bit and down a little bit. Enough to make it so that it doesn't overlap with the border, which is all we care about in the moment. Remember, it's not going to move. It's not going to bounce. We're going to do that one thing at a time. One thing at a time, folks. Which actually the next step is tomorrow. I don't want to make this video super long, so I'll end it pretty soon. But tomorrow is an e-learning day, which encompasses both A and B. So it's got stuff for all periods, regardless of even or odd. So I'm going to post a small assignment in each class, and the small assignment for this class is going to be the next step of your thing, which is movement. So you make the objects and the movement. You can very likely do some of both today. It's not like you have to wait for tomorrow, but I like to break things up into small parts. So anyway, let's try this brick thing real quick before we end the video, because I don't want to make a super long guy here. So let's forget about hide and update for now, because all we have to do is show it once. So we're going to draw it with self.x, self.y, and then it goes over width and height. Is that right? Probably. Certainly looks simple enough. However, we have to add it to the loop. Just for a super quick test, let's go brick.show for this and ignore all the other stuff. Is that going to work? No idea. Good chance I forgot something. Nope, it's fine. So it exists. Again, it doesn't move. Something wonky's going on with the mouse control for the paddle. But that's okay, because we did the assignment for today is to make some objects show up. We got one brick, we got the paddle in the right place, doing the right stuff, kind of. The next step would be making it move. Then the next step would be what happens when the ball hits the brick. That's when it gets good. That sounds like an expression, you know, when the ball hits the brick, like when the rubber hits the road or something. We will be fine if we do things one at a time. If you get your stuff, then move it, then make it collide, then refine it, then do a little bit, you're great. If you try to do it all at once, bad news, but we don't have to do that. So I'm going to end this video before it becomes super long, but on my breakout game, what I would do next and what I will do next in some examples, and I'll do examples of other games too because I don't want to ignore the other people. We're going to add more bricks and then figure out what's going on with the mouse control. If you saw when I was doing it just for a second, it was like kind of following me, but not really. Then we'll get to what happens when the ball hits the brick. Then we'll get to testing it, fixing errors, making it prettier, things like that. All right, have fun. Okay.